Hey everybody, welcome to the next episode of the Strand Tennis Center podcast, filled with tips, advice, tennis, not tennis, just life advice too, whatever you need. Like it on YouTube, share it on the podcast as well. Thank you. Okay. Everybody, welcome to the Strand Center podcast. We are lucky to have a guest, LSU women's head coach Taylor Fogleman. We are really excited for you to be here. I appreciate it, Taylor.
Steve, pleasure. Looking forward to it.
Okay. First, second year as head coach, can you tell me, I'm gonna bounce around here. We'll start at the beginning with you a little bit, from Tulane to Rice and all that stuff, but I'm also interested in the hot topic for me with questions is the transfer portal. Can you give me pros and cons for you? And what do you like about it? What don't you like about it? Or maybe you like it 100%. I'm not really sure.
With the portal you're talking about specifically. Yeah. Look, I think it's a double-edged sword, honestly. As far as I see it, I think it's great that they've taken out some of the restrictions in terms of the student athletes' choices that they can make. I do think that in turn it can breed, especially in the climate that we're in, quick jaunts of loyalty.
I get it.
I think we already, it's my personal opinion, had before this portal stuff a transfer problem to begin with. I think there's a lot of diligence that's not done so well from a players and family standpoint, and also from where I sit as well on the coach's end. But I do think in terms of some of the things that have been allowed, or there's been less restrictions in terms of if you'd like to transfer where you have the opportunity to. I think that is amazing for the athletes.
How do you feel as a coach? Does it change your coaching tactics at all? Do you feel, because it's such a, because you were talking to the Rutgers head coach, it can be a quick emotional decision for a kid to go right to the transfer portal if they even have a bad week or they have a conflict with their coach. And usually when we were younger and playing, you just kind of dealt with it, and sometimes that was better, but it can be really a quick decision. Do you find yourself, and I know you don't want to, kind of hesitating sometimes coaching, or has it gotten to that tactical and that literal, I guess?
Yeah, it's a fair question. I mean, I think some people might say that way. I feel like I've just kind of stayed who I am throughout the different times or eras, if you will, we've had in short order with the transfer portal and the changing landscape of college athletics in general. I think it goes back, for me, at least personally, Steve, to the recruiting on the front end of things, just knowing the kid and knowing the families that you're bringing into your program, and vice versa, them knowing, getting to know me and my assistant and staff and resources that we have here at LSU. I think when there's proper dialogue and enough of a courtship on both sides, if you will, then I don't think you get so timid with the coaching, fear that they might run off.
Do you feel then, I guess, the transfer portal will just expose people that don't have that good relationship anyways? You wouldn't really worried about it. It's kind of exposing people that are coaches that don't develop that culture with their kids, into that closeness with families. It kind of
I think, yeah, to a certain extent, I think it can. Just because I'm not and look, we have a few transfers on my team this year, so just because I'm not the biggest fan of the portal doesn't I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing either. Like, you could do all the diligence in the world, and when it comes down to it, it just might not be the best fit. And there's been nothing done wrong by either side. And so, like I said, to have the kids to have the ability to then make another choice that hopefully better suits them, with no restrictions or penalties that were in place like they were before, I think that there's only good that's come from that.
Now, do you have any rules yourself with the portal? Do you not try to do transfers mid-season or look at things for culture-wise with the team? I know there's kind of back and forth on people like to do the transfer portal coaches or accept during off-season time. Do you feel like mid-season's a little tougher trying to with team makeup and chemistry?
I think for sure. I mean, I can only imagine that it would probably be a little bit more difficult mid-season. Um, but I think it all comes back to the people that we're recruiting and the families. And if I feel like it's going to be a good fit for, I'm very cognizant of the other. In this case, we have 9 girls on our team right now. I'm cognizant of the 9 and how they're going to receive the person that we're recruiting, whether it's a freshman or a transfer, and obviously that person we're recruiting. I'm cognizant that they don't have to walk down the aisle of each other's weddings, but that they get on well with each other, because that's a big piece of the puzzle. You've been around the block enough. We spend an inordinate amount of time with the players, and I think the players spend an inordinate additional amount of time with each other. So if there's not good relationships or respect amongst their peers, then I think that's never going to be a good situation.
So, I mean, you've been such a great recruiter from Texas, winning 2 national championships. Did you always feel like you had good instincts for recruiting? Like, why do you feel like you're so successful in there in those rooms?
Um, I'm assuming I can't curse on this podcast, so
Yes, you
I'll go
can. Of
for it.
course, you can.
I'll say hell no. Did I know I always was a good recruiter? I think just as you're going through, I think this is my 13th year, I want to say, in the coaching space, the college coaching. Um, I had no idea what the hell I was doing the first few years. I think I was trying to figure out what I was looking for, honestly, with women's tennis in general. But I think as I've gotten older and hopefully a little wiser and a little bit more mature, everything's crystallized to me that there are a lot of good tennis players around the world, in this country, and then certainly around the world. Um, a lot of it has to do with the people and what their motivations are, what drives them to want to go out and work and be successful, and in all aspects of their lives. The families behind them, are they supportive of their kids and the decisions that they're making and wanting? Um, and if those two things are aligned and they come and have a look at what we're doing with our program and how we're individualizing things to a certain extent to better the players as tennis players, athletes, you name it. Um, you know, the sky's the limit, and I think I've been very, very fortunate to be able to recruit some excellent players that have gone on to a lot of good success in college and then even in the pro ranks. But to me, it all starts with did I feel that there was a connection with the players, the families, and then on their end, did they feel like there was a connection with me, the program, and then how we were going about our business?
Can you maybe give me a few traits when you walk in there now, walk into a player's perspective, a player's house, their parents? Are there certain qualities that you hear from the parents? Are there certain telltale signs that are a positive and a negative right away? Do you start to get very comfortable with understanding good and bad signs and certain characteristics? Does it get quicker?
Yeah, yeah, I think I'd like to think so, but um, uh, trust me, you can fall into some pit holes very quickly.
I hear you. I hear you.
I am not a big. Everybody's got reasons why not, or why something wasn't. I'm not a big like excuse person. Um, you know, Zoe Smith would have gotten to the round of 16 of hard courts, but
Yeah, yeah.
and that's life, honestly. But to me, when there's a pattern of that, that's when my antenna kind of goes up a little bit and say, well, I mean, like, how many excuses the sky might be gray? Are we going to use that, as an
Yeah.
excuse as to why something didn't happen? So, um, I think that's a big thing that I look for. I also, am really not necessarily overly looking for, but the kids to kind of take even. I know that at a young age, the recruiting's gotten younger and younger since I went through the process, but taking a little bit more ownership of stuff when the parents are constantly talking, and I'm not hearing anything from
Yeah.
um, the young ladies that we're trying to dig in a little bit deeper into who they are as people. Um, that's I wouldn't say concerning, but just something to where maybe I'm just getting older and a little bit
Well, you want them to take
non-PC.
ownership, right? Taylor, you want them to take
Yeah,
ownership for the good and the bad, right?
yeah, 100%. And I want the kids to have a big part of our program is I want the kids to have a voice.
Yeah.
When it comes to their tennis, when it comes to some decisions and life choices, and that's what ideally I'd like to see in the recruiting process. I mean, I don't want them walking all over their parents because that wouldn't be a good sign
Yeah,
either.
I get
But the ability for them to stand on their own 2 feet and express themselves, I think, is a big part of it as well.
Okay. So do you get a team together? I mean, you were so successful at Texas. What is the culture that you're trying to create on that team? The same kind of thing. You want people to express themselves, but obviously not walk all over the coach. I'm sure there's a fine balance, especially in this day and age, between kids feeling like they're entitled and kids feeling like they're part of a unit. I mean, how do you wrestle with that balance culture-wise? And maybe you can give me, you don't have to go specifically, some experiences on which teams are more challenging because of certain makeups and which teams are just, you know, a lot easier to work with. And what are those trials and tribulations?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first year we won it at Texas, in I think 2021, that was there was a lot of things outside of tennis with coming off of COVID and
Yeah.
the tests and the vaccines and mandates and all that stuff. Um, that was probably the easiest group to coach I've had in 12 or 13 years, and it in many ways no team is ever easy by any extent, but we had a really young group that kind of had bonded. We had 5 freshmen that started a lot of the year out of 6 spots. Um, so there was already a connection. Those kids had grown up playing together in juniors mostly and had, um, at minimum, a lot of respect for one another. Some of them were actually very, very good friends. Um, they all really were um, chasing after it very, very hard with the work that was being asked of them, and that they in turn wanted to do themselves. They all had lofty goals for what they wanted to do as a team, and then individually with their tennis in college, and then after college. Um, and so we really didn't have many hiccups. Um, we just, I mean, we had the only hiccup I would say is that we coulda, shoulda, woulda, maybe should have won the national indoors that year at Oklahoma State. But all it did was spur the kids on to want to chase after it harder. And so, that I think there were people that certainly wanted to do well, but that probably had 4 or 5 kids that wanted to play number one on that team.
Yeah.
And frankly, and a lot of other teams could have, but the selflessness that they had and the support they had for one another um, was second to none. I mean, it permeated all the way down to the non-scholarship players. I mean, so that was a really, I'd say, as far as a measuring stick, as easy as it got, if there is
Okay.
such a thing. Um, the next year was probably equally as difficult,
Okay.
honestly, and we ended up still somehow winning it again. But the expectations had changed, their personnel had changed. Um, we had some new faces, and uh, there was definitely a getting to know period. There was injuries that came into play. There was some mental stuff that came into play with people battling themselves and everything else. So I think we didn't actually feel like we got the group in a reasonably healthy space, even with one another, speaking candidly, until I mean, literally the day before we played the Big 12 tournament.
Wow.
Um, you know, and my boss Howard Joffe would definitely say that that was the case as well. But when you do get that synergy, even if it's that late,
Yeah.
and you hope it's not that late, hopefully you can get the situation together a lot sooner. But when that happened, I mean, everybody kind of saw it. It was like a freight train. I mean, we played exceptionally well and ended up being able to lift the trophy again.
So do you feel that's where a coach is, that's where the X factor is? The first year is a little bit easier, I guess, relatively. 5 freshmen, they're all working together, all kind of self-motivated. Did you feel like it was a better coaching year for you in 22 because there was more things to deal with? Did you feel like you had to test yourself more as a coach there?
I think you definitely, yeah, each year presents new challenges and new people. I think there was definitely, I don't know if I'd say so much more coaching as it was. I think and Howard did a lion's share of the work, to be
Okay.
honest, but I think it was more, we felt finally comfortable enough to tell the girls that it was their team,
Okay.
right? And if they weren't to work out some of the things that needed to be worked out, then we're probably never going to get to achieve what we probably could. Um, and so I think in some ways it was actually letting go of the rope,
Okay.
pardon the expression, and just handing it over to the girls to say, y'all are going to either, um, all get on the same page or you don't, and that's okay too, but we're just not going to, not going to be as good as we could be. So I think for me, I'm always at least trying to learn. Every year is different. Like I said, you got new faces. That was my 5th year at Texas that year, but you fast forward, I'm in a new place with new people, um, and so I think you're always just constantly trying to learn and get better as the years go.
Yeah. So, just origin of coaching for you. You graduate from UNC. You play professionally. Do you fall into coaching? Are you always interested? Or you got your MBA? Do you feel like, oh, do I get a real job? And where's that crossroads there after you finish playing yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Where's that decision? I'm always curious about where you're going to go after that moment when you're done playing professionally.
Yeah, no, similar. I'd say similar to the answer to did I know I was always a good recruiter? Did I think I was ever going to still be in college tennis? Also, a hell no. I like piddled around playing, 15 and 25 Ks and all that stuff I mean, I had a reasonably good college end of my college career. And then played for about 12-ish months, 15 months tops. Enjoyed it, enjoyed the people that I got to know and travel and all that stuff, but knew um, the money was going to run out very soon, and
I
I
get you.
wasn't as good as I thought I was. But so the long story short, I thought I was actually going to law school.
Okay.
I had halfway through playing, studied for the LSAT. I got accepted into Tulane and LSU. I knew I wanted to be back closer to home. Was deciding on that. My mother had actually played. Was one of the first scholarship players at Tulane when Title IX went into effect, and was at a luncheon with what was then going to be my boss at the time, Terry Sisk. She was looking for a GA. Um,
Okay.
because a friend of mine that was doing it for had just finished his master's in economics. The
That's
only
a
thing
that's
there was two
graduate
degrees I
assistant for everybody that doesn't know. Sorry, Taylor. Graduate assistant,
yes,
everybody. Good.
yeah.
Good.
After Katrina, most of Tulane's non-revenue sports were GA grad assistant jobs. The only thing I couldn't study was a medical degree or a law degree. They just thought it was and I would have agreed, too extensive to do the job properly. So I had one meeting with Terry, hit it off, and then my butt off for 2 weeks and took the GMAT and somehow got ushered into the MBA program at Tulane.
Wow.
Um, and even the first year, I mean, it was awesome. Getting my feet wet with the coaching. I thought I was going to go into some friends in the consulting world, a cousin that was working for Nike, did a summer internship, investment banking stuff. But every year that it went, I was there at Tulane for 3. The team was getting a little bit better. I find myself, I mean, I was always enjoying it, but like enjoying the process of the work. And then when it came time to graduate, I was looking at jobs. We'll call it like 9 to 5 normal jobs, and I just got a call from Elizabeth Schmidt at Rice, who at the time was just like a shooting star and within the tennis world. I mean, what she was doing at Rice was just second to none in a lot of respects, and so it was just not something I wanted to give up. I thought I could go and hopefully add some value, but certainly learn a hell of a lot from Elizabeth, who is still to this day I think one of the better coaches that we have in college tennis.
Hmm. Did you mentioned your mother? Coaching wise, were you coached by your parents at all? Was there any coaching in that vein? Did you have to deal the same parameters with your parents? You playing, understanding that you think that helped your recruiting at all as well? Understanding that dynamic.
Probably not. I had my mom was a reasonably good player. My dad just played tennis recreationally.
Okay.
They were very I'd call it very easygoing parents. I mean, definitely held my hand over the fire to, if I want to do something to try to do it well. Um, but in terms of, you know, intense match feedback or, why weren't you, load more on your left leg when you're going out to hit a forehand? Like they were more of just sat back, supportive. What can we do to try to help? Uh, there was no pressure, none of that stuff that really overburdening helicopter parent type of stuff that I tend to see from
Well,
time to time.
in general, that's a good thing to me because turning professional, being anywhere near the top 100 is like 1% of 1% in the world, anyways. So you'd rather have the parent that's a little bit easier going, because you're going to have to be with them forever, and most of the time you're not going to be professional. And we find that those kids have more successes, anyways. The overbearing parent seems to strangle the situation, and sometimes the kid doesn't want to be there anyways, and they're being pushed in the wrong direction. So it's probably in our experience is more success being with a parent that's just supportive of what you want to do, and you just kind of lean into what they like first instead of crowbarring what you want out of them.
Yeah, very much. I would completely agree. Completely agree. And I think that I was very lucky that I found myself in that situation.
So you're in Texas. The LSU job comes up. Now you're in your second year. Do you feel the same kind of transformation? I know you guys had a huge improvement last year. I mean, is it the usual suspects in the SEC? Is it Georgia, Texas A&M, Tennessee, and then you're trying to push your way into that top 3, or where do you feel? I don't want you to give any predictions, but I'm always curious.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think, yeah, those guys, I think Florida's going to be very, very good. I mean, the whole league, I think that's what, I found last year to a certain extent is that if you don't show up, like there was maybe a couple of matches in the Big 12, or we didn't play a conference schedule at Rice, but that we certainly had to play well, but we knew that maybe we could sit a player, or, um, this league, and we're going to get Texas very shortly and Oklahoma to join the party. If you don't show up, you're going home a loser. Just literally, you will lose the match. Top to bottom. We had matches last year. I think even Ole Miss, who barely missed the tournament by a little bit, but I mean had Auburn, had a bunch of other Tennessee, top 15 teams just like right on the ropes. And I felt like even last year we left a few matches out there where, a few games, a few more points fall our way. And I'm not sprouting some gray hairs with us making the NCAA tournament. But I think it's always going to be my hope. I think the reason I took the job, honestly, more than anything about being closer to home, and most of my family's still in New Orleans, but is that they do have the resources here, human and monetarily and facility wise, to be able to compete for championships. And I think there's been some successes here. I'd say more than anything, like individual accolades, some of the really good players, national championships and doubles. But in terms of sustained excellence as a team, I wouldn't say LSU's been one of the more blue bloods of women's college tennis. And so for me, I think we definitely did. I give the girls an immense amount of credit last year because they came off just a really tough year on a lot of fronts. And they really bought into the program. And frankly, we had some very good tennis players on the team. So it was definitely a nice turnaround. I do think that we have every ability to take a few more steps forward this year with the group that we have. But a lot of it's going to come down to we have put in a lot of good work, but we still have work to do. Sure. And just how much, like we talked about a little earlier, how much the team's going to actually come together.
So speaking of the work, can you give me in season, not match day, practice day, how are you running practice? Everybody's always interested in how a coach runs a practice. Is it more tactical, more strategic? Just give me a kind of a regular practice day.
Yeah, so we kind of like I alluded to a little earlier, team is definitely front and center for me in terms of the health and energy and camaraderie. But as far as the tennis goes, we do on many accounts take a pretty individual approach to what we're doing with each one of the girls. So in the morning hours, we do, I call them private lessons, but individual work. And so, Jane Smith would have an individual with me for an hour, more or less. That can take a lot of different shapes. Could be super technical in nature. Could be tactical. My body's telling me I'm feeling older than 36, but I'm still there. So, I mean, it might be on a morning. Best thing we think is to play a set or two, and we have a younger coaching staff as well. Chris Simpson, who played #1 here about 8 years ago, is my assistant. And then our grad assistant is Rebecca Mertena, who played #1 and 2 at Tennessee, just graduated last year. So that's how our mornings kind of get made up, is that individual work with each one of the girls. The team practice we have in the afternoon, normally for about a couple hours. The way I describe that to most people, it's like pretty vanilla in nature. Sure. We're doing a lot of stuff, whether it's drills off the baseline, volley work, competitive games or situations. We play a lot of sets, honestly, singles and double sets with the girls, and even a match, honestly, or two every week if we're here.
How does the challenge system? Sorry. How does the challenge system work then? Well, with your lineup.
I don't necessarily really. I kind of leave it to me to make the pairings of stuff. Okay. And we can keep it kind of fresh. I mean, if I have the energy, I'll hop in there. But normally, I tap Chris or Rebecca on the shower.
Let them do the road work. Yeah, you're right. Let them do
it. Can you guys ground this one? Or, but yeah, I mean, it's more, I'd say, team oriented. There's not going to be too many times in the team practice that it's going to be so individualized. I think everybody's going to be getting some value out of it. And then depends on the day of the week. Wednesdays, we leave after practice for yoga.
Okay.
But all the other days we're doing some strength and conditioning work, and it's either early morning, Monday and Fridays. This fall we've done it early morning, and then Tuesday, Thursdays in the afternoon.
So
But
so twice a week
that
of fitness, you said. Twice, 3 times a week of fitness, I guess. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Um, what I meant by challenge wise, if you're number one player, do they if they're set at number one, can you change that at any time, or do you feel like it's set until they I mean, is it your call to move people around, or do you do it based on letting them, the two play one when it could be in midseason or whatever? Or how does that work for you with your lineup?
Yeah, the way I've always tended to look at it is, I mean, there's a huge body of work that we've just gone through, and not huge, but I mean, it's a reasonable sample size in the fall.
Okay.
And so I have those fall results. I have how people have practiced and consistently brought, good energy and good performances, even in that respect. And then any coach would be lying if they said they don't have preconceived notions, right, about what
Sure.
wasn't recruiting, nor was Howard, like Peyton Stearns to play number 6, on the team at Texas. But you put all that stuff in a vacuum, and then you have to churn out a lineup that you think is going to one be the most fair to the girls, but then two that gives you the best opportunity to be successful. Um, it is very, in my view, open for change. And not like, oh, you lose a match, you're going down type of thing, but um, going through the course of one fall, even for some of our players, I don't think that's necessarily so fair that they're judged on could be 8 matches.
Sure.
Like once we get to middle of the spring and I have 20 or 30 matches of, a sample size, it becomes a lot more clear. Yep, this person should be higher than you or should be lower than you. And you can actually have data to show them that. But it's a pretty, what have you done for me lately sport?
Sure.
It's
And I'm sure the
even if
players
you're
understand that, right? I mean, if they're not performing, I mean, what are they gonna? What are you gonna give them a pass? This is the SEC. This is like, this is real tennis, so to speak, quote unquote. As what we're saying, we're not gonna. It's not a charity event. I understand, right?
yeah. And there's, I mean, to me, it starts to be pretty self-evident, right? Like
Yeah.
last year, we had started a girl at number 1. She was doing quite well. Girl at number 2 was doing also quite well, both not losing. Girl at number 1 faltered a little bit, for 3 or 4 matches. Girl at number 2 kept winning. At that point, it's okay. Let's
Yeah.
give the number 2 girl an opportunity to play number 1 and see how she does. And it's we want to always be so impulsive with decisions and reactions and stuff like that. So I don't think the switching and stuff like that, I don't look at it like that way. Like we're going to switch every match you lose, you'll go up or down a spot, nothing like that. But I think I come back to what's going to be the most fair for the girls.
Sure.
And has this person earned an opportunity to play higher or maybe get into the lineup? And does this person need to drop down one just based on how they're doing?
So we got a minute and a half left here. I got a couple speed round questions for you. Any books you would recommend? Doesn't have to be tennis. Could be psychology wise. Anything you've read that helped you? Anything that you have passed on to, gifted to anybody that you feel like is worth reading? Doesn't have to be sports.
I haven't lately. I did to one of my former current player actually. We'll go nameless. I did give her the Winning Ugly book by Brad Gilbert.
It's a good one.
We want it to be so pretty at times, and it rarely is. But
That's
John
fine.
Wooden's book as well. I've gotten
Okay.
some good value out of just more personally.
Okay. Um, and your favorite beignet place in New Orleans? Because I was just down there last weekend. And w- what's your favorite place down there? Because those always talk about Cafe Du Monde and all these places and all the beignet places. Usually, a
Yeah,
a local New Orleans kid knows where to go.
I can't stand the wait. Nothing against Cafe Du Monde, but and it's nostalgic, and you got a great view of the cathedral and the river and everything. But morning call,
Morning call.
if
Okay. Because
morning call on yeah,
I
on
was down
Canal
there with my
Boulevard.
wife, and we tried to go that. I couldn't wait on the line, and we got cut off. So let's get him back. Beignets. Um, boy, we waited online. We're gonna go back to it, and I was like, should we really wait on this line? And then were told me all the locals were telling me that it was sold since Katrina. It's been bought by different people, and it's just not the same place. They don't even like the beignet itself anymore over there at Cafe Du Monde. Like it's too moist, like too thick. It
Yeah,
should be a
thick
little
and
lighter.
doughy, probably. Yeah, I like a little crunch to mine.
So, what made you? Was it just your mother that got you into tennis, or did you feel? Did you play all different sports as a kid?
I did. My mom, she'd probably credit my uh, late granddad. He was the one that started paying for lessons for me. Actually, with the guy that coached my mother back in the day, and we've lost him now as well. But yeah, I probably started at 6 years old. I mean, my parents, even after my mom was done with college, they were recreationally playing, and I was following them around. But I played soccer and baseball basically up until about 12. And then I think as I did have very easygoing parents, like I mentioned, but I think there was like one or two nights in a row, jonesing from soccer practice to some tennis or whatever. I fell asleep either in my food or fell asleep on a book or something like that. And I think that's when my parents said, like, you're getting to the age where we don't care, but just pick one.
Yeah.
Uh, Tennis resonated probably the most with me.
I think that probably helps. I think people try all these different things, and and we're always talking about kids. Success is lagging. It takes a long time to be successful at something. You kind of have this uninformed optimism in the beginning, and then you get informed pessimism, and then we call it the valley of despair, and then they quit. So those are like kind of the cycle. Instead of switching, you've got to go through that, and you've got to understand that the shiny new thing is going to be shiny until you figure out that it's super difficult anyways, and that you just got to stick with the lever you're choosing. And unless you the self-awareness, unless you don't have the aptitude, you need a base aptitude. But anything you take or anything you want to be successful at is going to take 10 years anyways. And I think it's hard for kids to realize that they want to they want it quick. It's just the way society is now in regards to just your phone. You get I mean, I didn't have a phone as a kid. You didn't have instant access to everything, and it's just success is lagging. That's basically what we try to tell them, and I think it's great that they, something simple, just make you choose, and that way you're not doing three different things, and you're not really focusing on one thing, and then you're kind of like half in on everything. I mean, how much reassurance do your kids need coaching wise that you know negative situations happen all the time. I mean,
Oh
how do
yeah.
they handle it? How are the kids? What's the best advice you think? I mean, it's not a specific word or specific thing, but how do you tell them that this is all part of the process?
Um, it's a great question. I wish I had a universal answer. I think it's pretty I look at each person like a different situation. Um, I think there is a lot of, to an extent, proactivity that goes on, but I mean, a lot of life is dealing like with responses to stuff. Um, what's your response going to be like to losing 3 games in a row after you were up 4-3 or something like that, for a tennis analogy. What are you going to do after you studied your butt off for a math test and you got a C minus? I think more and more this day and age, it's like, you know, when I've tried and failed, well, that's it. To your point, like I'll just give it up. Instead of, I mean, it's a blessing and a curse in a weird way with all the stuff, the instantaneous stuff that we have. But there are so many resources
Yeah.
that I feel like are out there that in a lot of cases go untapped. And it's just because they've tried one or two things, it hasn't worked out that way. Well, it's like if you actually woke up, there's about 20 other things
Yeah. It's true.
that probably could help you along the way. But I think that's the big thing is just trying to the best with being cognizant of feelings, but stuff that happens in life on aggregate, there's going to be better stuff and there's going to be worse stuff that comes. And I think grounding them to it is in some ways. I mean, I know I'm talking about it and we're both making a living to a certain extent from it, but
Sure.
it, by and large, right? Like you were talking about the 1/2 of 1%. For everybody else, it's a game. It certainly does have the ability to teach you some life lessons. It definitely does have the ability to put you in positions to be able to get a scholarship or a job or connections that are going to help you on so many levels in life. So I think that's the perspective thing is the toughest thing for me to get across to a lot of the players, but I think that's you see it very clearly more and more now. The best players really maybe they're a bit more talented, or a little bit more athletic, but the perspective and the however many inches this is between your ears that to me that's what's separating Djokovic from
Yeah.
everybody else at the moment or any other great person in their field.
Well, Adam Grant just had a new book out, Hidden Talent. He's a professor, which is interesting because it goes over chess champions and things like that, very similar to the book called Range. But sometimes the most talented kids don't deal with the adversity as much because they're used to winning, and then they hit adversity and they're not mentally prepared for it, right? And so some of the kids, they did what was the Harvard study where they told kids you worked really hard, and that's why you're successful. Other kids they told you're super talented, this is why you're successful. Then once they get adversity, they quit. So that work ethic, that tenacity is huge. If you just think you're talented and talented alone, once you hit that wall, it's really hard to get through. And we find telling our kids that if you just keep working hard, and like we always said, you need a base of talent. You can't go into something and you can't be 5'4" and play in the NBA. It's very, very rare. You can't be Muggsy Bogues. There's not
Right.
many people that can be that way. But if you have an aptitude of talent, really, it's just that extra work that you're going to put in. Even in Range, if you've read that book Range, they took the top violin chairs and the best one just practiced 2-3 more hours, in aggregate. So it's hard when you're coming up against adversity. Kids are dealing with losing and things like that, and just maybe putting in the extra work. There's always maybe one constraint the kid is missing. Maybe you're just not doing this at the right time. There's a couple strategic things that can be an unlock, and it's hard. They're young. I mean, they're 19, 20, 21, and they just think, like you're saying, like I can't win anymore. It seems tennis is you can feel like you can't lose, and then the next week you can't win.
Oh yeah.
It's brutal.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
how do you?
It's normally been my experience too, Steve. When you hit the chord with me about the constraints, it normally is with a lot of kids, especially that are looking to play college tennis or college athletics in general. It's normally one constraint, but it shows itself in a lot of different forms.
That's
It's
very
like if
true.
you peel back the layers, it's normally just one, maybe two things that are keeping someone from their full potential, but the amount of reoccurrences, it can show itself in a lot of different ways.
Right.
Um,
It's just like running a business. Same thing. We talk about running a business here, whether it's coaching, off court, on court. There's usually one or two constraints, and usually, if you unlock that one constraint, there's a big change, a big sea change, and it's hard to see, and that's why coaching like yourself is huge. So you just can't. You just need a different perspective to be able to see that constraint. You're right. It comes out in so many different ways, and people can't see it and they can't understand it. And it's one simple unlock, and that's why they go, oh, why do coaches make all this money? Why do people do that? Because they can unlock that constraint and make a huge difference in someone's career.
yeah, no question.
Yeah. Boy, we really covered a lot. I tell you, if you can, I always ask this to coaches. Kids trying to get a hold of a coach. I mean, at this level, I mean, I know that their UTR and their ranking is the big key. Do you tell a kid, listen, if I haven't responded to an email, keep reaching out? How can a kid get a hold of you if they feel like they're not being noticed and they have the ability?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, I try. I'm sitting in a little different seat, and maybe that's why you know, didn't give Howard or Terry or Elizabeth the. I mean, we do get like flooded with emails. Like I thought I was as an assistant getting it, but it just seems, I guess, when your name's at the top of the program, it's just they all get sent to you, and so I mean, I think for me personally, I try my best to respond to everybody. And at least give them an answer. Um, I would say just even if it takes a little bit more persistence.
Yeah.
Um, Normally, I mean, most of the people, if you do get one response, and I'm totally advocated for myself. I can't speak, you know, my cell phone number's there. If you're not getting a timely response after the first, email because it's gotten lost in the shuffle, text, call, do whatever you can. I think in terms of really grabbing someone's attention, at least speaking for me, if something is in the body of the email too, like a video or something that I can just instantaneously click a link and oh they're playing points or hitting or
Okay.
doing all that stuff. I think that at least has the ability to hopefully trigger some response. Um, yep, that looks good. We can talk further. No, I don't think that you fit the bill for, where we're at the moment, but at least you're going to get some feedback. The only thing that I would say, and this is maybe just more of a pet peeve of mine, is like with some of the recruiting agencies when they doctor up these videos to like you would think that Jane Smith, who's like a 3-star recruit from New Jersey, is like beating Sabalenka or something like that in a video. It's like just raw footage, no good, no bad, anything like that. But I'd say that's
Okay.
really, really the best way.
That's so funny. How don't they know they're going to coaches that have played before, and how are these how are these people trying? How are they trying to fool coaches that have seen and know when things are doctored? They just want to see a player hit some balls and see how they play. It's funny how they think it's. This is a whole other thing we can get into about these services promising these kids the world with this, what they're doing with their videos and all that thing, and it's just a giant money suck for these parents and kids as well. So
Yeah, no, I would certainly tend to agree. And, you definitely want to put your best foot forward and, make yourself stand out. Um, but I mean, I think I'd like to think that at least the people on our side of the business are going to do enough diligence to figure out what really is going on for good or for bad. But no, I think like in many ways, the persistence piece, you know, I would say is the biggest thing. If you're not getting through with an email, if you really want to, you know, have a sincere look at, in this case, LSU or, any other school, by any means. I mean, I think it's just my personality. I know Chris is as well, who I work with. We try to respond. I don't like when I send an email and don't get a response. So I try to put the shoe on the other foot. But yeah, if not, then call, text, do whatever you need to do to try to get in front of that person. And once you get that opportunity, just make the most of it.
Well, listen, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you giving us the time to talk about everything from soup to nuts. And listen, good luck. I'm sure you're going to be successful. I don't want to put any jinxes on you from what happened at Texas, from your recruiting prowess, from the things I've read. I think the sky's the limit for LSU, especially with the facilities. And, I mean, the players you have and the players you're going to continue to grab and get. So I really appreciate your time, and good luck.
Steve, I sincerely appreciate it, and thanks so much for having me on. It was a heck of a lot of fun shooting the breeze with you.
Yeah, but if I'm ever down south, I'll bother you. Hopefully watch a match down there in LSU. I definitely would like to check one out.
Would love to have you anytime.
All right. I appreciate it, Taylor. Thank you.
See you, Steve.
Bye-bye.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Strand Tennis Center podcast. It was great to have Taylor Fogleman here talking about so many interesting things about college sports, tenacity, constraints, something we talk about all the time. How one or two things can change someone's career or someone's trajectory. So keep working, keep trying. Don't jump from one thing to the other. Stick with it, and hopefully you'll find some success. Thanks. Hey, everybody. Hope you like the podcast. Please share it with your friends, anybody that you know, anybody that's into tennis, anybody that's into bettering themselves. Share it.